It seems that every week we learn of another serious cyber attack against U.S. businesses and government agencies. The most devastating recent attack is the one against the Office of Personnel Management that compromised the background-checked information of more than 21 million Americans. The pace of such attacks appears to be accelerating. According to the security firm Symantec, last year alone, more than 300 million new types of malicious software or computer viruses were introduced on the web, or nearly, if you can believe this, 1 million new threats each and every day. Just last month, Director of National Intelligence James Clapper testified before the House Intelligence Committee that, and I quote, "Cyber threats to U.S. national and economic security are increasing in frequency, scale, sophistication, and severity of impact," end quote. From my position as head of the Senate Commerce Committee, I've promoted the great potential of the emerging Internet of Things, which promises to yield improvements in convenience, efficiency, and safety by connecting everyday products to the web. But I've also held several hearings on the cybersecurity risks and challenges that accompany an increasingly connected world. CISA will help to address these risks and boost cybersecurity by increasing the sharing of cyber threat information between and among the private and public sectors. The bill would authorize the voluntary sharing of cyber threat information and would provide common sense liability protections for companies that share such information with the government or their peers when they abide by the bill's requirements. The goal is to help companies and the government better protect their networks from malicious cyber attacks by sharing information about those threats earlier and more broadly. Similar bipartisan legislation was reported by the Senate Intelligence Committee last year, but was never considered by the Democrat-controlled Senate at the time. This year, the Intelligence Committee passed the bill by a bipartisan vote of 14-1, which should portend a strong bipartisan vote here on the floor of the Senate. The House of Representatives has also passed 2 bills to facilitate the sharing of cyber threats, so we are now within striking distance of finally enacting critical cybersecurity information sharing legislation after several false starts in recent years. I know that some have questioned whether this bill provides appropriate protections for personal privacy and civil liberties. I appreciate these concerns, and I believe the bill's sponsors have meaningfully addressed them, including through modifications to be included in the manager's amendment. This bill is not a surveillance bill. Among other things, the modified bill would limit the sharing of information to that defined as cyber threat indicators and defensive measures taken to detect, prevent, or mitigate cybersecurity threat. The bill also requires private sector and federal entities to remove personally identifiable information prior to sharing threat indicators. And the federal government can only use the cyber threat information it receives for cybersecurity purposes and to address a narrowed set of crimes such as the sexual exploitation of children. The bill also requires regular oversight of the government sharing activities by the Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board created after 9/11 and by relevant agency inspectors general. In the end, it is important to remember that CISA is about cyber threats like the malware being used by criminals in hostile states, not personal information. Meanwhile, failing to enact this bill could actually make it easier for criminals and rogue states to continue collecting our personal information from vulnerable systems. Now, Mr. President, let me be clear. This is not a silver bullet, and it will not render cyberspace completely safe. No bill can do that. But CISA is an important piece of the ongoing effort to improve our cybersecurity. Late last year, after a decade without passing major cybersecurity legislation, Congress enacted 5 cybersecurity laws that target other pieces of the cyber puzzle. I co-authored one of these, the Cybersecurity Enhancement Act, with former Senator Jay Rockefeller. This law ensures the continuation of a voluntary and private sector-led process at the Commerce Department's National Institute of Standards and Technology, or what we refer to as NIST, to identify best practices to protect our nation's critical infrastructure from cyber threats. Cybersecurity Enhancement Act also promotes cutting-edge research, public awareness of cybersecurity risk, and improvements in our cybersecurity workforce. CISA will work together with this new law and others to ensure that businesses have timely warnings about current threats so they can better protect themselves and all of us from cyber attacks. and it does so in a manner that protects individual privacy and avoids government mandates. Mr. President, I look forward to the coming debate on the bill, including a healthy consideration of amendments, and I urge my colleagues to join the bipartisan sponsors and a broad coalition of stakeholders around this country in supporting this much-needed legislation.